For 20 years, I suffered in silence, carrying the weight of a betrayal so deep it changed who I was. Now, at 75, I've decided to break free from this burden that has consumed decades of my life. His name was Gatsby Morrison, my business partner, my closest friend, the man I trusted with everything I had built. For 15 years, he sat at my dinner table, played chess with my granddaughter, promised to help fund her college education, all while he was systematically stealing from our hardware store, stealing the money meant for my wife's medical treatments, stealing my granddaughter's future, stealing $47,000 from the people he claimed to love. I am Atticus Finley, 75 years old, a man who built his life on handshakes and trust. I owned a hardware store in Cedar Falls for 30 years, had a wife named Cordelia who painted watercolors in her spare time, a granddaughter named Luna who collected vintage postcards and dreamed of studying art history at the State University. I thought I knew what betrayal looked like, thought it came with obvious signs, shifty eyes, nervous laughter, the kind of behavior you see in movies. I was wrong. Real betrayal wears a familiar face. It brings you coffee every morning. It remembers your birthday. It asks about your wife's doctor appointments with genuine concern in its voice. Gatsby Morrison was that face for me. We met in 1985 at a hardware convention in Chicago. Two men in their 40s, both tired of working for other people, both dreaming of something bigger. He had this way of listening that made you feel heard, really heard. When I talked about opening my own store, he didn't just nod politely. He leaned forward, asked questions, saw the vision I was trying to paint with my words. 3 months later, we shook hands in front of an empty storefront on Main Street. Finley and Morrison Hardware, equal partners, no lawyers, no complicated contracts, just two friends who believed in each other's character. The first 5 years were hard. Long days that started before sunrise and ended after midnight. Cordelia would pack us lunches, and Gatsby would share his stories about growing up in Nebraska while we ate sandwiches surrounded by unpacked inventory. He told me about his father who died when he was 12, about raising his younger sister alone while his mother worked 2 jobs, about the promise he made to himself that he would never let the people he loved struggle the way his family had struggled. I believed every word. By 1990, the store was thriving. Cedar Falls was growing, and we were the only hardware store for 20 miles. Gatsby handled the books while I managed inventory and customer service. We were perfect partners. He was detail-oriented where I was big picture, cautious where I was impulsive. The kind of balance that made our friendship stronger and our business successful. Luna was born that same year. My son had married young, moved to California for work, and when Luna arrived, Cordelia and I became the primary grandparents in her life. Gatsby was there the day we brought her home from the hospital, held her while Cordelia fussed with blankets, promised to teach her everything he knew about building things with her hands. He kept that promise. Every Saturday, Luna would come to the store after her piano lessons. Gatsby would set up a small workstation in the back office where she could hammer bent nails into scrap wood. He taught her to measure twice, cut once, showed her how to read blueprints by drawing simple diagrams of birdhouses and picture frames. When she turned 8, he helped her build a jewelry box for Cordelia's birthday. Sanded every surface until it was smooth as glass. Helped her stain it the exact shade of cherry that matched our dining room table. The pride in his eyes when Cordelia opened that gift was the same pride I felt watching my granddaughter grow into a thoughtful, capable young woman. The store continued to grow through the 90s. We added a garden center, expanded into plumbing supplies, hired 3 part-time employees and started talking about opening a second location in the next county. Gatsby's attention to the financial details meant I could focus on what I loved most, helping customers solve problems, building relationships in the community, watching Luna's Saturday visits turn into after-school jobs, where she learned to work a cash register and organize inventory. Those were golden years. The kind of years you don't appreciate fully while you're living them because you assume they will last forever. Cordelia was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2003. Stage 2. Treatable, the doctors said, but expensive. Insurance would cover the basics, but the best treatment plan required specialists in the city. Private rooms, experimental therapies that might give her a better chance at full recovery. Gatsby didn't hesitate. We had been setting aside money for years, planning for Luna's college education and our own retirement. He suggested we use the business savings account to cover Cordelia's treatment costs. Family first, he said. The store would survive, but family was everything. I remember the conversation exactly. We were sitting in the office after closing time, going through treatment estimates that seemed impossibly high. Gatsby pulled out our financial records and showed me how we could restructure some business loans, delay some equipment purchases, and free up enough money to give Cordelia the best possible care. Luna was 13 then, smart as a whip and already talking about studying art history at the State University. Gatsby promised her that when the time came, the store would help with her education costs. He had seen her report cards, watched her win the county science fair 2 years running, knew she had the kind of mind that deserved every opportunity we could provide. The treatment worked. Cordelia responded better than expected, and by early 2005, she was in remission. Luna had grown into a poised 15-year-old who talked about college applications with the confidence of someone who knew her future was secure. The store was having its best year ever. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect, maybe, because that's when the small things started changing. Things so subtle, I almost missed them entirely. Gatsby's morning coffee ritual was the first sign. For 15 years, he had brought 2 cups to my office every morning at 7:30 sharp. We would sit together, review the previous day's receipts, and plan the day ahead. It was our time to sync up, to make sure we were seeing the business from the same angle. But in the fall of 2005, something shifted. He still brought the coffee, but he started drinking his standing up, started checking his watch more frequently, started avoiding eye contact when we discussed the monthly profit reports. I told myself he was just stressed. His daughter was applying to colleges too, and his wife had been talking about renovating their kitchen. Money conversations make everyone nervous, even when the numbers are good. But the feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. The feeling that something fundamental had changed between us, and I couldn't name what it was. October 15th, 2005. The date is burned into my memory like a brand. Gatsby called in sick that morning, first time in 3 years. His voice sounded strained over the phone, apologetic in a way that felt wrong. Too careful, too rehearsed. I should have known then. The store felt different without him, quieter, like something essential was missing from its rhythm. I handled the morning customers alone, sold paint to the Hendersons for their kitchen renovation, helped old Mr. Burke find the right screws for his fence repair. Normal Saturday morning business. Mrs. Chen came in around 11. Sweet elderly woman who ran the flower shop next door. She seemed confused when she approached the counter, holding a receipt in her weathered hands. She had bought lumber from us 3 days earlier, 2x4s for her son's deck project. The receipt was clearly ours, our letterhead, our stamp, signed by Gatsby in his careful, precise handwriting. But when I checked our books, there was no record of the sale. Mrs. Chen showed me the receipt again. October 12th, $347, paid in cash. Gatsby's signature at the bottom, just like always. I told her there must be some mistake. Computer error. I would look into it and get back to her. She left satisfied, trusting that we would sort things out. But my hands were shaking as I closed the cash register. I spent the next hour going through our records, checking every transaction from that week, every receipt, every deposit slip. The lumber Mrs. Chen had purchased was gone from our inventory, but there was no corresponding sale in our system, no record of the money coming in. That's when I decided to check Gatsby's desk. I had never gone through his personal workspace before. 15 years of partnership built on trust and respect for boundaries. His desk was always organized, neat stacks of invoices, pens arranged by color, a small framed photo of his family vacation to Yellowstone. The bottom drawer was locked. I found the key taped under his desk lamp. Such a small thing, such a simple hiding place. The kind of place you use when you're not really trying to hide something from someone who never looks. Inside the drawer was a second set of books. Handwritten ledgers in Gatsby's distinctive script. Page after page of transactions that existed nowhere in our official records. Customer payments that had been pocketed instead of deposited. Inventory sales that had been erased from our system. A systematic, methodical theft that had been going on for almost 2 years. I sat in that chair until the sun went down, going through every page, every forged entry, every stolen dollar. The numbers adding up in my head like a countdown to the end of everything I thought I knew about my life. $47,000. The exact amount we had saved for Luna's college fund. The exact amount we had set aside for any future medical expenses Cordelia might need. The money that represented 15 years of careful planning, of sacrifice, of shared dreams between partners who trusted each other completely. Gone. Not lost to bad investments or economic downturns or any of the normal risks that come with running a business. Stolen, methodically, deliberately, by the man I had trusted more than my own brother. The worst part wasn't the money itself. The worst part was understanding how it had been done, the careful timing, the way Gatsby had handled all our bank deposits for the past 2 years, claiming it was more efficient for one person to manage the financial details. The way he had suggested we switch to a new accounting system that he would personally oversee. The way he had positioned himself as the financial expert while I focused on customer service and inventory management. Every suggestion had been logical. Every change had seemed designed to make our business more efficient. I had been grateful for his attention to detail, his willingness to handle the boring paperwork that I had never enjoyed. He had used my trust against me, used my lack of interest in financial minutia as cover for his theft. Turned my strengths as a partner into weaknesses he could exploit. I found receipts for his daughter's private music lessons, invoices for the kitchen renovation his wife had been planning, credit card statements showing expensive dinners and weekend trips that should have been beyond their means on his salary from the store. My stolen money had paid for their improved life, while my family had been unknowingly living on less than we had earned. The betrayal felt physical. Like something had been torn out of my chest. Like the person I had been for 15 years had died in that chair, surrounded by evidence of how thoroughly I had been deceived. I thought about Cordelia at home, cooking dinner and humming to herself the way she did when she was happy. About Luna upstairs doing homework, secure in the knowledge that her college fund was growing and her future was protected. About all the plans we had made based on money that no longer existed. How do you go home and pretend everything is normal when your entire understanding of reality has just collapsed? How do you look at your family and not see the future that has been stolen from them? I locked the second set of books back in the drawer, returned the key to its hiding place, closed the store, and drove home in a daze that felt like drowning. Cordelia was setting the table when I walked in. She smiled and asked about my day, and I heard myself saying it had been fine, just fine. Business as usual. Luna bounded down the stairs and showed me her history report on the Great Depression. She had written about families who lost everything overnight, about the way economic collapse destroyed trust between neighbors and friends. She was proud of her research, excited to share what she had learned about how people survived when their world fell apart. I praised her work and helped her practice her presentation, all while knowing that our own small depression had already begun, that the person we had trusted most had already taken everything we thought we had. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Cordelia slept peacefully beside me, planning what I would say to Gatsby when he returned to work, how I would confront him, whether I would demand an explanation or simply call the police. But morning brought a different kind of revelation, a choice I hadn't expected to face, a choice that would define the next 20 years of my life. I drove to his house that night, parked across the street under the old maple tree that had been there since the neighborhood was built. The engine ticked as it cooled. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to the world. Through his kitchen window, I could see everything. Gatsby sitting at the dinner table with his family, his wife bringing him a plate of food, his daughter showing him something from school, animated and excited the way Luna got when she talked about her art projects. He looked normal, happy, like a man who had nothing to hide. His daughter was maybe 10 years old, pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. She climbed onto his lap while he helped her with what looked like math homework. He pointed at numbers on the page with the same careful attention he brought to our inventory reports. The same hands that had written those fake ledgers were now guiding a child through her multiplication tables. I sat there for 3 hours, watching this man I thought I knew live his life with money he had stolen from my family. His wife laughed at something he said. His daughter hugged him good night before heading upstairs. He kissed his wife's forehead while she cleaned the dishes. Perfect family moments bought with my granddaughter's college fund. But sitting there in the dark, I started thinking about that little girl, about how her world would explode if I walked up to that door and told her parents what I knew, about how she would remember this night as the last time her family felt safe and whole. How do you destroy a child's life to get justice for your own family? The question ate at me as I drove home, as I lay awake listening to Cordelia's peaceful breathing, as I watched Luna get ready for school the next morning, chattering about her upcoming college visits like her future was still secure. Gatsby didn't come to work that day either, or the next. When he finally returned on Wednesday, he looked hollow, thinner, like he hadn't been sleeping either. He brought coffee to my office just like always, set it down on my desk with hands that trembled slightly. We sat in silence for a long time, both of us knowing that something fundamental had changed, but neither willing to name it. I could have confronted him then, could have spread those fake ledgers across my desk and demanded an explanation, could have called the police and let justice take its course. Instead, I asked about his daughter's school project. He looked surprised, grateful, started talking about her science fair entry, about how proud he was of her curiosity and determination. The same pride I felt when I talked about Luna's achievements. That's when I made my choice, and not consciously, not with careful consideration of all the options. I made it in that moment of recognizing the love in his voice when he talked about his child. I would handle this quietly, personally, without destroying his family the way he had unknowingly damaged mine. Over the next month, I began the slow process of covering the theft. I sold my father's coin collection, the one I had been planning to pass down to Luna, got $1,500 from a dealer in the city, sold my grandfather's pocket watch to an antique shop, took out a second mortgage on the house that Cordelia knew nothing about. I started working nights at Murphy's Diner, washing dishes and cleaning tables after the dinner rush. 67 years old, scrubbing pots until midnight to replace money my partner had stolen. The work was hard on my back, but it was honest in a way that felt necessary after so much deception. Weekends, I loaded trucks at the freight depot, heavy boxes and long hours that left me exhausted, but too tired to think about what I was doing or why. The younger workers called me Pops and treated me with a kindness that made the humiliation bearable. Cordelia started asking questions about why I was always tired, about why we had suddenly gotten more careful with money, about why the college fund statements had stopped coming in the mail. I told her the hardware business was facing more competition from the big box stores, that we needed to tighten our belts for a while until things improved, that Luna's education was still secure, just delayed while we reorganized our finances. Every lie felt like swallowing glass. But the alternative was telling her that the man she thought of as family had been systematically stealing from us for 2 years, that her medical treatments had been paid for with money that was supposed to secure Luna's future, that our comfortable life had been built on theft and betrayal. Luna noticed the changes too, asked why I looked so tired all the time, why we weren't talking about college visits anymore, why the cheerful confidence had drained out of our dinner conversations. I told her I was just getting older, that college was still in her future, but she might need to consider state schools instead of the private universities she had been researching. That hard work and determination mattered more than expensive educations anyway. She accepted my explanations with the trust that teenagers show their grandparents, but I could see the worry in her eyes. The way she started looking at brochures for cheaper schools, the way she began talking about getting a job to help with expenses. Meanwhile, Gatsby grew more nervous, more distant. He stopped bringing coffee to my office, started avoiding one-on-one conversations. When customers asked about him, I made excuses about family obligations and business training. The worst part was maintaining the pretense of partnership. Sitting through monthly business meetings while he presented financial reports that I knew were fabricated. Listening to him talk about growth strategies and investment opportunities while I worked second and third jobs to replace the money he had stolen. He suggested we consider expanding to a second location. Talked about the profits we could reinvest, the bright future ahead of us. All while looking at numbers that bore no resemblance to our actual financial situation. I found myself studying his face during these conversations, looking for signs of guilt or shame or acknowledgement of what he had done. But there was nothing. Just the same earnest enthusiasm he had always brought to our business discussions. Either he was a better actor than I had ever imagined, or he had somehow convinced himself that his theft was justified, that he deserved the money he had taken, that our family sacrifice was an acceptable cost for his family's comfort. 3 months after I discovered the fake ledgers, I arrived at work to find a resignation letter on my desk, handwritten on plain white paper in Gatsby's careful script. Personal reasons, it said. Family obligations that required his immediate attention. Thank you for 15 years of partnership. Thank you for the opportunity to build something meaningful together. No explanation, no acknowledgement of what he had done, no apology for the devastation he was leaving behind. Just goodbye. He cleaned out his desk that night after I went home, left his keys on the counter, and disappeared from our lives as completely as if he had never existed. The hardware store limped along for another 5 years, but something essential had died with Gatsby's departure. My heart wasn't in it anymore. Every day in that building felt like visiting a crime scene. Every customer interaction reminded me of the trust I had lost and the family I had failed to protect. When the big box stores finally drove us out of business, I felt more relief than sadness. The store had become a monument to my own foolishness, a daily reminder of how thoroughly I had been deceived. but the damage was already done. Luna worked 3 jobs to pay for college. Cordelia delayed medical checkups because we couldn't afford comprehensive care. Our family learned to live with less, never knowing that we had once had more. And I carried the weight of that secret alone. 20 years of waking up at 3 in the morning with the knowledge of what had really happened. 20 years of watching my family struggle while the man who had caused their struggle lived somewhere else, presumably comfortable and free. 20 years of wondering if I had made the right choice by choosing silence over justice. Until last week, when everything changed again. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in March. No return address. My name written in handwriting I recognized, but hadn't seen in 20 years. The same careful script that had once balanced our books and signed our business documents. The same script that had forged those hidden ledgers. My hand shook as I carried it to my study, set it on the desk where I had been paying bills, and wondered if I had the courage to open it. 20 years of silence, and suddenly Gatsby Morrison was reaching across time to speak to me again. Inside was a cashier's check made out to Luna's name, $47,000, the exact amount he had stolen down to the penny. Interest calculated and included, as if he had been keeping precise records of his debt all these years. Below the check was a single sheet of paper. 4 sentences that changed everything I thought I knew about the man who had destroyed my faith in friendship. I'm sorry, old friend. I was sick then. Gambling debts, desperation, terrible choices. I've spent 20 years trying to make this right. That was all. No elaborate explanation. No plea for forgiveness. Just an acknowledgement of the theft and an attempt at restitution that came 2 decades too late. I sat in that chair for hours, holding the check and trying to process what it meant. The money was real. The apology was real. But the damage was also real. And money couldn't undo 20 years of consequences. Luna had graduated from college the previous spring. Art history degree from the State University, just like she had dreamed. But she had worked 3 jobs to pay for it. Waited tables at night, tutored kids on weekends, cleaned offices during breaks when other students went home to visit family. Her graduation day was beautiful, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. The weight of 4 years spent juggling education and survival. She had loans that would take decades to repay. Had chosen a smaller, cheaper school over the prestigious programs she had originally researched. Had learned to live with less opportunity because we had taught her that was what our family could afford. Cordelia had passed away 3 years earlier. Cancer returned, more aggressive this time, and we delayed treatment again because we were still recovering from the financial pressures of Luna's education. The doctors said early intervention might have made a difference. We would never know. At her funeral, I stood at the graveside thinking about all the medical care we could have afforded if Gatsby hadn't stolen our savings. All the specialists we could have consulted. All the treatments we could have tried. The money in the envelope could have saved her life. Could have given Luna the education she deserved without the crushing burden of debt. Could have prevented 20 years of struggle and sacrifice and compromise. But it had arrived too late to matter for the people who needed it most. That night, I called Luna. She was living in a small apartment in the city, working at a museum and trying to build a career in art conservation. Making ends meet, but not much more. Still carrying the financial discipline that poverty had taught her. I told her about the check, about Gatsby's letter, about everything I had kept hidden for 20 years. The silence on the phone lasted so long, I thought she had hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but different. Like she was processing not just the money, but the revelation that her entire understanding of our family's history had been wrong. She asked why I had never told them, Why I had let them believe we were struggling when someone had stolen from us. Why I had chosen to protect the thief instead of seeking justice for the victims. I tried to explain about Gatsby's family, about the little girl I had seen through his kitchen window, about the choice between destroying one family to save another, about the impossible mathematics of justice when children are involved on both sides. But my reasons sounded hollow when spoken aloud, excuses dressed up as noble intentions. I had been protecting myself as much as anyone else, protecting myself from having to admit how thoroughly I had been deceived, how completely I had failed to protect the people who trusted me most. Luna accepted the check because she needed it, but she also asked me a question that cut deeper than any accusation. What if Grandma had known the truth? What if she had been able to make her own choice about forgiveness and justice instead of living with lies disguised as protection? I had no answer for that, had never considered that my silence might have been another form of theft, that keeping the truth from Cordelia and Luna had robbed them of agency, of the right to decide for themselves how to respond to betrayal. The money sits in Luna's account now. She used part of it to pay down her student loans, put the rest into savings for the future she's still building. But she also started asking questions about other family decisions, other times when I might have chosen protection over truth. Our relationship is different now, more honest, but more complicated. She loves me, but she also sees me more clearly, sees the choices I made and the prices other people paid for those choices. I think about Gatsby sometimes. Wonder if he spent 20 years carrying the same weight I carried. If he woke up at 3 a.m. thinking about the damage he had caused. If sending that check felt like freedom or just another form of burden. The address on the envelope led to a law office in Denver. When I called, they told me their client had died 6 months earlier. Cancer, they said. He had left instructions for the letter to be sent after his death. One final piece of business to resolve before he was gone. So there would be no reunion, no conversation about what happened or why. No chance to ask the questions that had haunted me for 2 decades. Just money and a brief apology from a man who took his full story to the grave. I understand now that some secrets are too heavy for one person to carry. That choosing silence over truth doesn't protect anyone from pain. It just changes who carries the burden and for how long. The betrayal happened 20 years ago, but the consequences are still unfolding. Luna is building a life shaped by struggle she never should have endured. Cordelia died without knowing why our family's resources had been limited at the moment she needed them most. And I lived with knowledge that might have changed everything if I had found the courage to share it. Some choices can't be undone. Some damage can't be repaired with money or apologies or good intentions. Some silences echo through generations, shaping lives in ways the secret keeper never intended. I broke free from my silence too late to save the people I was trying to protect. But maybe telling this story now can spare someone else the weight of carrying truth alone. Maybe someone else will find the courage I lack to choose honesty over the comfortable lie of protection. The check is cashed. The secret is told. The burden is shared. But the cost of 20 years of silence can never be calculated or repaid.